play well. Like it's fun for me to have a chance earlier in Hong Kong. It's fun for me to be up on the leaderboard. I'm really enjoying this, and it's fun starting to play really well.
Phil Mickelson lost something that once seemed impossible to lose: his place at the center of the golf world. How does a six-time major champion, one of the most fearless and charismatic players in history, suddenly become the name everyone stops talking about? And more importantly, why is everyone talking about him again now? Before we go any further, ask yourself this question: can a legend ever truly disappear, or does the game always find a way to bring him back? For years, Phil Mickelson wasn't just another golfer. He was the entertainer, the risk-taker, the player who attempted shots others wouldn't even imagine. Fans loved him because he played with emotion instead of fear. Whether he was escaping impossible lies, firing at flags from impossible angles, or celebrating unforgettable victories, Phil made golf feel unpredictable. His career was built on moments that most players only dream about. 6 major championships, dozens of PGA Tour victories, and a Hall of Fame resume that placed him among the greatest players the sport has ever seen. But every legend eventually reaches a crossroads, and Phil's arrived faster than almost anyone expected. The golf world changed. New stars emerged. Younger players became the faces of the sport. Then came the biggest divide professional golf had seen in decades. The conversation was no longer only about winning tournaments. It became about loyalty, money, tradition, and the future of golf itself. Phil Mickelson suddenly found himself standing in the middle of a storm unlike anything he had experienced before. Some praised him for challenging the system. Others believed he had damaged the game that had made him famous. No matter which side people supported, one thing became impossible to ignore. Phil Mickelson had become the most controversial figure in modern golf. But controversy has a strange way of changing public perception. At first, every interview, every statement, and every appearance generated headlines. Then something unexpected happened. The noise began to fade. The conversations became quieter. New champions lifted trophies. Different storylines dominated television broadcasts. For the first time in decades, Phil Mickelson wasn't the main character in golf's biggest discussions. And that silence raised an important question. Was Phil disappearing from the game, or was the game simply moving on without him? History tells us that sports can be brutally unforgiving. Yesterday's heroes are often replaced by tomorrow's stars. Golf is no different. Talent keeps arriving, records keep falling, and every generation creates new idols. Yet legends have a unique ability to remain relevant even when they are no longer winning every week. Why? Because their influence extends far beyond scoreboards. Phil changed the way many fans viewed aggressive golf. His creativity inspired countless players to believe impossible shots were worth attempting. Even today, younger professionals continue to speak about watching his incredible recoveries and fearless decision-making while growing up. That legacy cannot simply disappear because a few quiet months pass. But here's where the story becomes far more interesting. Silence does not always mean absence. Sometimes it means people are watching more closely than ever. Every appearance Phil makes is analyzed. Every practice round sparks speculation. Every tournament entry leads fans to wonder whether one more magical performance could still be hiding inside one of golf's greatest competitors. Think about that for a second. How many athletes in their 50s still attract this level of attention without even winning regularly? Very few. That alone tells you everything about Phil Mickelson's impact on the sport. His name still carries weight because his career has been filled with moments that refuse to fade from memory. Remember the historic victory that made him the oldest major champion in history? Few believed it was possible. Experts predicted younger stars would dominate. Instead, Phil shocked the world and reminded everyone why writing off great champions is one of the biggest mistakes sports fans can make. That victory became more than just another trophy. It became proof that belief can sometimes defeat logic. It also reinforced something every competitor understands. Experience cannot be measured by age alone. Yet after reaching one of the greatest milestones of his career, Phil's journey took another dramatic turn. Public debates intensified. Fans argued online. Analysts questioned decisions. Headlines focused less on golf and more on controversy. It almost felt as though people had forgotten the player behind the headlines. They remembered the arguments but overlooked the achievements. They discussed opinions but ignored decades of excellence. So let me ask you something. If one difficult chapter begins to define an entire career, is that really fair? Or should a lifetime of accomplishments still matter? That's the debate surrounding Phil Mickelson today. Some believe his legacy has changed forever. Others insist greatness should always be judged by what happens inside the ropes. Regardless of where you stand, there's one fact nobody can deny. Very few golfers have influenced professional golf as deeply as Phil Mickelson. His rivalry with Tiger Woods helped transform golf into must-watch television for millions of fans. His fearless style inspired a generation of players. His longevity proved that determination can extend careers far beyond expectations. Those facts remain true regardless of changing opinions. And now, something unusual is happening again. The silence surrounding Phil Mickelson is beginning to break. More players are mentioning his name, more fans are asking questions, more discussions are returning to what his role in golf might still become. Is this simply nostalgia, or is the story far from over? Because if sports history has taught us anything, it's this. The greatest comebacks rarely begin with loud celebrations. They begin quietly, when almost everyone has stopped expecting them. And that may be exactly where Phil Mickelson finds himself today. But what happened behind the scenes while everyone else was looking somewhere else? And why are so many people suddenly paying attention to him again? The answers reveal a side of this story that very few fans have truly considered. And that's where everything changes. Phil Mickelson lost more than tournaments. He lost the unquestioned spotlight that had followed him for more than 3 decades. But here's the question nobody could answer. Was the golf world finished with Phil Mickelson, or was it simply waiting for the next chapter? Think about it for a moment. How does a player who won 6 major championships, collected dozens of PGA Tour victories, and built one of the most exciting careers in golf history, suddenly become a man surrounded by silence? That question has divided golf fans for years, and today we're finally looking beyond the headlines to understand what really happened. Before we continue, tell me in the comments, do you think Phil Mickelson's greatest legacy is already complete? Or do you believe he still has one unforgettable chapter left to write? For most fans, Phil Mickelson wasn't just another golfer. He was the player who made impossible look normal. When everyone else played safely, Phil attacked. When others laid up, Phil reached for the green. His fearless style earned him the nickname Lefty, but more importantly, it earned him millions of loyal fans around the world. Every tournament felt different when Phil was in contention because nobody could predict what he would do next. That unpredictability became his greatest weapon. Throughout his career, he proved that courage sometimes matters just as much as perfect technique. He wasn't afraid to fail if it meant giving himself a chance to create something extraordinary. That mindset produced unforgettable victories and heartbreaking defeats, but it also made him one of the most entertaining athletes the sport has ever seen. By the time he completed his Hall of Fame resume, Phil had become far more than a champion. He had become part of golf's identity. His rivalry with Tiger Woods helped transform professional golf into a global spectacle. Television ratings soared whenever they played together because fans knew they were watching 2 completely different personalities chasing the same goal. Tiger represented relentless precision. Phil represented fearless imagination. Together, they created one of the greatest rivalries in sports history. But every legend eventually reaches a moment when the game begins to change. Younger stars arrived with incredible speed and power. New faces started lifting trophies. The conversation slowly shifted toward the next generation. For many great athletes, that's where careers quietly fade away. But Phil Mickelson has never followed the normal script. Just when critics believed his best days were over, he produced one of the greatest moments golf has ever witnessed. At the 2021 PGA Championship, at the age of 50, Phil stunned the sporting world by becoming the oldest major champion in history. Almost nobody predicted it. Analysts doubted him. Betting odds counted him out. Yet over 4 unforgettable days, Phil reminded everyone why champions should never be underestimated. That victory wasn't simply another trophy. It became one of the greatest comeback stories in modern golf. It proved that experience, belief, and fearless decision-making could still overcome younger competition. Fans celebrated. Fellow players applauded. The entire golf world seemed united in admiration, but nobody realized that another storm was already approaching. Within the next chapter of his career, Phil found himself at the center of one of the biggest controversies golf had experienced in decades. Suddenly, conversations were no longer focused on birdies, majors, or incredible recovery shots. Instead, they centered on professional golf's future, changing business models, enormous financial opportunities, and the growing divide between tours. Phil became one of the most discussed figures in the sport, not because of another victory, but because of the decisions he made away from the golf course. Supporters believed he was helping reshape professional golf forever. Critics believed he had damaged traditions that had existed for generations. Every interview created headlines. Every public appearance fueled new debates. Every statement sparked another round of discussion across television, newspapers, podcasts, and social media. No matter which side people supported, one fact became impossible to ignore. Phil Mickelson had become the most polarizing figure in professional golf. Then something unexpected happened. The noise slowly disappeared. Media attention shifted toward rising stars. New champions captured the spotlight. Different tournaments dominated the headlines. For the first time in decades, Phil Mickelson wasn't the biggest conversation in golf. That silence felt unusual because fans had become so accustomed to hearing his name every week. But silence doesn't always mean someone has been forgotten. Sometimes it means the story is quietly changing behind the scenes while everyone else is looking somewhere else. And that's exactly why so many people have started paying attention again. Because legends don't simply disappear, they wait, they adapt, they find new ways to influence the game, even when they're no longer standing on the biggest stage every Sunday afternoon. Today, Phil's influence can still be seen throughout professional golf. Many younger players openly acknowledge how much they admired his creativity growing up. They watched his impossible flop shots, his aggressive approach to risk, and his willingness to chase victory rather than settle for safety. Those moments inspired countless golfers to believe that bold decisions sometimes produce unforgettable results. Legacy isn't measured only by trophies, it's measured by the players who come after you. And in that respect, Phil Mickelson's impact remains undeniable. Yet perhaps the biggest question still hasn't been answered. Can public opinion truly change? Can time reshape the way fans remember one of the most controversial periods in modern golf? History suggests that it often does. Sports fans eventually look back at complete careers rather than individual moments. Greatness has a way of surviving controversy because extraordinary achievements become impossible to erase. Phil's 6 major championships remain. His historic PGA Championship victory remains. His decades of thrilling golf remain. No debate can change those accomplishments. That's why conversations surrounding Phil Mickelson are growing louder once again. Fans aren't only discussing the controversies anymore. They're beginning to remember the fearless competitor who transformed golf into entertainment every time he stepped onto the first tee. And perhaps that's the biggest reason the silence has finally been broken. Because no matter how opinions evolve, golf history cannot be written without Phil Mickelson. His story includes triumph, setbacks, criticism, redemption, and resilience. Very few careers contain every one of those chapters. The question now isn't whether Phil changed professional golf. He unquestionably did. The real question is how future generations will remember him. Will they focus on the controversies, or will they remember the fearless champion who spent decades proving that impossible shots are only impossible until someone is brave enough to try them? That's a conversation golf fans will continue having for years to come. If you enjoyed this story and want more deep dives into golf's biggest legends, biggest controversies, and untold stories, make sure you subscribe, leave a like, and tell us your opinion in the comments. Your support helps us bring you more stories that go far beyond the headlines.